So we've had an OCR announcement, and contrary to popular opinion, we didn't have a drop. I thought there would be at least a 25 basis point drop, probably no more. Why? Because the economy is not charging ahead, and my opinion was that they would have needed to do that to further stimulate the economy. They dropped the OCR by 50 basis points at their last announcement, and I'm sure they were probably hoping for a better result in terms of economic activity since that announcement, but there hasn't been. Their rationale for not dropping it is slightly to do with the fact that they're waiting to see what that last drop will do over the longer term, and they're perhaps just hoping that they'll get a bit more traction out of that 50 basis point drop. So it's not that there isn't necessarily going to be drops in the future, but at the moment they seem to be pushing the pause button. So a little bit disappointing perhaps for investors, because it could have resulted in cheaper interest and therefore better cash flow. But we haven't got it. So what does that mean for the property market? The issue perhaps is less about interest rates anyway, and it's more about the availability of credit. And at the moment, we've got really, really cheap money, and that's not really the challenge. The challenge that the investor market has in general is more about access to capital. And the banks at the moment are still making it harder than it used to be. In fact, I'd argue that it was easier to get money during the GFC than it is now to get money for investing in property. They're making that harder because they are being cautious, or they're holding back. So why are they holding back? Well, first of all New Zealand banks are owned primarily by Australian banks, and the Australian banks at the moment are not happy necessarily about the Kiwi environment, because we've got capital adequacy coming, and therefore the New Zealand banks are having to hold back a little. So the bigger question is, when will some of that ease? And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the capital adequacy decision. So the Reserve Bank governor seems quite intent on bringing this in, and then the question becomes, well, to what extent will he do it? We're going into election year next year. The Reserve Bank is supposed to be independent of the government, but if I was the government and knowing that this capital adequacy could have quite an impact on sentiment, would the government be having quiet cups of coffee with the Reserve Bank saying, hey, do we really need to push it this hard? Is the New Zealand economy not in good shape? Is the New Zealand banking system not in good shape? So do we really need to force banks to hold that much capital? One argument goes that if they do bring this in, that money will flow from riskier lending to less risky lending. So if you think about business lending is riskier than property, so is it that money will actually become more available for property lending? Time will tell. Or is it that just the tap in general will remain with a constraint on it? So overall, I think the message is, look, interest rates I think are going to stay low for quite some time. There's not anything on the horizon that I can see that's going to result in them jumping up quickly. The economy's not taking off, it's not booming. The property market is not cranking up quickly. So I don't think we'll see interest rates going up. This is more about availability of credit.